Before I start, I also wanted to thank GPSS for putting this on. I think it's awesome. I'm glad you guys are doing it. And so basically, I'm partnering with Climate Solutions on my degree project. And my research objective is to make the Washington state economy more energy efficient. That means helping consumers, encouraging more consumers to buy things like upgrades for their house or their business that will use less energy. That's kind of my main goal. And I should really note that I'm in the adolescent stages of doing this. I'm not turning in my DP until end of December, unlike most of my fellow classmates who are rushing to finish now. So I'm going to try to give you an overview of what I've learned so far and maybe why we need to be more energy efficient. But as far as the how, I may not be able to devote as much time on the how. And I think before we start, it's probably important for me to give a little background on how I ended up getting into this research. Over the summer, I was interning for the American Wind Energy Association, and we were in the thick of the battle in Congress to try to get them to pass a renewable electricity standard. And the state of California came up on my radar so many times, not only because they have the best renewable electricity standard in the country. They want to get 33% of their electricity by 2020 from renewable power. There was also a ballot measure, Prop 23. The oil companies from Texas wanted to overturn California's cap and trade law. California, as you may know, is the only state in America that has an economy-wide cap on carbon emissions. They want to reduce their emissions to 1990 levels by 2020. So, I love California, and I was like, well, why can't Washington State be more like California? So I called up Climate Solutions and said, I would love to do my degree project for you guys to get us to pass the Western Climate Initiative. We need to do this legislative session. And they basically said that the political will to pass the cap and trade legislation in our state was not there. So, but they're like, okay, but there is this energy efficiency research that you could do. So if you want to do that, then we'd love to have your help. And I was like, yeah, I'll go ahead and how do I switch this? So I said that I would do the energy efficiency research because I realized that energy efficiency is really a key part of the solution. First thing you have to keep in mind is that our state's population is rapidly growing. We, in the last census, we just gained a congressional district seat, and we're going to have to brace for the expected rise in energy demand. And to meet this demand, we can build more power plants, which will obviously consume more of our natural resources, and also building more power plants is ultimately going to raise costs for consumers. So while we may need to build more power plants, what we would like to do is we'd like to prioritize energy efficiency first. Because if we become more energy efficient, according to the Northwest Power and Conservation Council, we can meet up to 80% of our expected increase in energy demand through energy efficiency by 2024. So that's really what I'm hoping we can prioritize, and that's where a lot of the potential is. And if we can set up a good energy efficiency policy now, then once we enact cap and trade later, the energy efficiency policy is basically going to complement it. So and the reason why I have a fruit there is because people say that energy efficiency, it's really the low-hanging fruit. Like if we really want to conserve energy and save money, then this is like really the easiest thing for us to do. And Secretary Chu even goes further and says it's not the low-hanging fruit, it's the fruit already laying on the ground. Okay, hopefully my next slide should pop up here. Okay, well, I wanted to go to my next slide, which was going to show what the energy sources are in, like, where we get our energy from in Washington State, like with all the electricity that we have, and 70% of it is 70% of our electricity is from hydro. About about 7% of it is coal, and then 11 is natural gas. So part of the reason our electricity is so cheap, it's because we have this hydro. We have the 48th lowest energy prices in the United States. And but given that we do have a lot of coal from Montana still, if we can start conserving energy now, obviously we'll use less of that coal. So that's just another good thing. And so now I'm just like, okay, so as I want to try to make our economy more energy efficient, let's see where things are right now. So the first thing I started out doing was looking at our utility landscape. We have a very large number of utilities in Washington State. We have 3 big investor-owned utilities, so they sell electricity for a profit. And so it seems that if they sell electricity for a profit, then I really think that their motivation to get customers to use less electricity, there really isn't that much motivation there. I mean, some people will say that if you're an investor-owned utility, you're going to have to spend a lot of money, a lot of capital investments on building a new power plant. But if your customers can be more efficient, then you won't have to spend the money on building that power plant. And so it might actually help you if your customers are more efficient. But the reason why I don't think that holds true is because if an investor-owned utility spends a lot of money on a power plant, they can actually go to the utility during their rate-making case, and they can recover the costs that they've invested in the power plant through charging their customers a higher rate. So it's really there really isn't much incentive there for them to get their customers to be more energy efficient. And obviously, we don't really have rate decoupling in this state. And so aside from the 3 investor-owned utilities, we have about 60 publicly owned utilities in our state. And they're not-for-profit, and they're governed. These publicly owned utilities are governed by elected boards, city council members, and so given that city council members, elected people, are the ones who govern these publicly owned utilities, the stakeholders are the voters. So if the publicly owned utilities, if they want to raise electric rates, obviously the voters aren't going to be happy about that. So that's just kind of like another hurdle that I noticed. So that's kind of a layout of our utilities. You know what? I guess I'm just okay. Yeah, click on the arrow. Maybe that's how it works. Okay. So what type of energy efficiency policies and programs do we have today in Washington State? Obviously, we have the big one, I-937, which I'm going to talk about. But we also, just really quickly, we also have some stimulus-funded programs. Probably the most notable is the Community Power Works program in Seattle. There's also programs in Bainbridge Island in Kitsap County. And what these programs are, some of what they're doing is they're going and knocking on people's doors, asking them if they want to get retrofits. And they also have financing thanks to the stimulus. And a lot of what some of the barriers are to getting people to be more energy efficient, a lot of them are psychological. And so hopefully these pilot programs will develop some data that we can use later so we can create better customer outreach programs. But the big law we have in Washington State is I-937. I-937 was approved by voters in 2006. Among other things, the law established an energy efficiency resource standard. So that standard applies to all the utilities in our state with a customer base of over 25,000, which is about 85% of our customers. And as of April 2010, Washington was one of 24 states with an energy efficiency resource standard. The way that this is structured really varies by state. There will be some states that will require a specific percentage reduction in the volume of energy sales in upcoming years. Like you'll have to reduce your energy by X amount by becoming more efficient. In Washington, it's a little bit different. We have, for our law, we require all of the utilities to identify all Now, this is where it could get a little complicated, so stay with me. They have to identify all achievable forms of cost-effective conservation potential for the next 10 years, and they have to report back to the utilities every 2 years on their progress. So cost-effective conservation, what that basically means is that it's, if a utility wants to generate, let's just say 10 megawatts of energy, it's cheaper for the utility to get those 10 megawatts by being more efficient versus buying 10 megawatts through coal, hydro, or whatever. So whenever it's cheaper to be efficient and it's achievable, the utilities have to go for the efficiency. And so now you might be wondering, like, what is it that the utilities spend money on to be more efficient? Well, what they spend money on is customer programs. It's basically providing energy audits. It's giving residential customers loans or rebates for more efficient lights, window replacements, geothermal heat pumps. You could go to a restaurant and provide them with a more energy efficient oven, a better dishwasher. And to determine how much energy each of these items save, we have the Northwest Power and Conservation Council, which they have this rigorous process where they analyze, like, how much potential can you save from each of these different items, and the utilities have to use that as a guideline for determining how much energy they're going to save from each of these different items that they offer their customers. And so, like, if they give rebates, X amount of rebates for this, and like, this is how much we're going to save, and then they use that to calculate how much energy they've saved, basically. And utilities also spend money on customer education and outreach, and that also counts as one of their expenditures. And this is kind of complicated. It takes me a while to wrap my head around this, but there are like multiple areas where a utility can spend money, and there could be some areas that are not cost effective, but they generate a lot of savings. Then there could be other areas that are relatively cost effective, but they don't generate a lot of energy efficiency savings. So basically, the ultimate thing is that the overall expenses of the utility have to be cost effective. Okay, so the problem with using the word achievable is that it's basically like the utilities can say what they think is achievable. And what they think is achievable really depends on the quality of the customer outreach that they're doing. I mean, if customers don't know about the efficiency rebates they can get, then the utility can say, well, they don't know, so we can't really achieve that. So, but if they have an ambitious customer outreach program where they're trying to reach a lot of customers, then the achievable efficiency potential is going to go up. So it's really like an arbitrary thing, sort of. And so there is some concern that utilities will lowball what they say is achievable. And that's particularly true because if they don't hit their target, which they set, then they have to pay a penalty, a $50 per megawatt hour penalty for every megawatt hour of efficiency that they don't meet. So it's kind of like I've spoken with a lot of, could you let me know when I'm running out of time, too? Okay, so I've spoken with a lot of people who've said that the achievable threshold isn't necessarily always being lowballed by utilities, but there's certainly a lot more that we can do to increase the amount of customers that participate. I think just because I wanted to maybe leave at least a little room for questions, I'm going to really just zip through the next few things I wanted to say, which is that in Washington State, for the consumption of energy, we have 3 different sectors. We have the residential sector, we have the commercial sector, and we have the industrial sector. I think the most potential is in the industrial sector, but that's politically probably the hardest to get. I'm focusing on single-family residential efficiency, trying to figure out how to do that. And it's really quite complicated because you could get your electricity from Seattle City Light. You could get your home heating oil from somewhere else. You get your natural gas from PSE. All of these different energy sources are coming to your house. All of the rebates are different. And so that just contributes to a convoluted process for the customer, where it already might be hard for them to really want to get an upgrade, and now they have to go through 3 different sources that might cover the same thing. So I'm still examining how we can address some of these challenges and how we can fund these programs, and there's a lot of ways that we can fund it. And the amount of time I have left, I just want to know if anybody has any questions. Okay, well, in that case, I wanted to end with this quote. I think that the challenges that we face are especially difficult because there's a lot of, in the political world, I feel like it's easy to bash the environment from my experiences. And I hope that the policymakers, the advocates who want to support the environment, I think they just need to talk about the economic benefits of clean water. And while people might bash investments in clean energy and energy efficiency, we have to say that, you know what, it results in clean water and clean air, and there are really true economic benefits for these things. And so I hope that can get communicated better. I-937, I would love to see that enhanced, and I think the next panel is going to be about that. So if you have any questions, let me know. I'd love to talk more in detail, and thank you very much.